Mayoral Memo with Matthew Dickerson from Dubbo Regional Council.
I'm Jack Underwood with you through to 4 o'clock this afternoon on Live and Local, and thank you for choosing to spend your afternoon with us here at 2BS. We welcome to the program now the Chair of Regional Cities New South Wales and also the Mayor of Dubbo, Matthew Dickerson. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. How are you going there?
Very well. Look, I won't keep you too long, but it is really interesting the work that the Regional Cities New South Wales do. Talk to us a little bit about that body, and of course you're the chair of Regional Cities.
It's actually grown up from the old Evo cities, and Evo cities still exist, but you remember that Bathurst was involved, as was Dubbo. Back in Evo cities, we had 7 inland regional cities way back in 2010. And as a result of that and the collaboration work that we did amongst those cities, that's grown up, if you like. And we've now got 15 cities in a group called Regional Cities New South Wales. And the focus for that group is really to talk to government about what we need in regional areas to keep things happening the way we want it to happen, whether that be population growth, whether that be health services, a whole range of things, just to make sure the government doesn't forget about us. Collectively, those 15 cities represent approximately 1 million people. So it's a fair number of people, but it actually goes further than that because, as you would know, all of those regional cities outside of the metro areas service lots of small areas. And if I think about Dubbo, we service places like the Narromines, the Gilgandras, the Walgetts, the Burkes, the Warreners, and that applies to many of those 15 regional cities. So it's certainly a big chunk of the population across the state that we look after, and so we really want to represent those cities to the government and try and work out ways to do things better.
If you look at, say, the last 10 years, there's been a big focus on regionalisation, on growing regions, bringing people out to the regions, attracting workforce. And, of course, we had a push out here to the regions during COVID, a lot of people getting away from that city environment and seeking, the serenity of regional areas. We've got a lot to offer out here, but housing is a big problem.
Well, it's actually an interesting problem because one of the problems we have is that you're right, people do want to move to regional areas, and we've been working away, I think, quite well with programs like Evo Cities, talking about the advantages of moving out to regional areas. And then it took a catalyst like COVID to come along and really accelerate that growth into regional areas. Now, obviously, I'm not talking about COVID in a positive way. There are a huge number of negatives, and obviously people lost their lives during COVID. But what it did do was it pointed out to people that maybe they didn't need to live in metropolitan areas. Maybe if they were working from home in the suburb of Sydney, they could work from the home in Bathurst or Orange or Dubbo or Tamworth. So a lot of people did take advantage of that. And that's created a problem for us now. We haven't got enough housing. And this is common across different levels of it, but common across all the 15 regional cities, that people want to move out to them, but they just don't have enough housing. And that's the thing that we're focused on. We've got a number of things we want the government and the opposition to look at during the election campaign. One of those is how to increase the availability of housing.
We're having conversations, a few conversations on this program about the idea of building up, not out. You have done that there in Dubbo. Tell us a little bit about what you're working on.
Well, different densities is, I think, a really important aspect of this. And there are blocks available. And again, I don't want to focus too much on Dubbo, but certainly Dubbo is an example where we do have builders now that are selling blocks of land down to 300 square metres. Now, there are some people out there living in a house at 300 square metres in size, and that's all well and good if you can afford it, but it's not for everyone. So the idea of having different size blocks for a start is a really big step forward. So you can have 300 or 600 or 800 square metre block sizes. Even those people with some of those older blocks that might be, say, 1,600 square metres in size, being able to do an infill development. So basically put into that development another housing block or another house in that same block of land. We've also got some developers at the moment who are building, as you say, up. We've got 3 approved developments in our CBD, and this is pretty exciting, for apartments, so blocks of apartments, which sounds absolutely crazy for regional areas, but this is what we need to do to accommodate the people that are moving to regional areas. We're talking about up to 14 stories high is one of those apartment blocks. And the other thing that blows me away is that these apartments are being sold off the plan. If someone would have said to me 10 years ago that builders are going to sell apartments or units off a plan, I'd say no. In regional areas, everyone expects to almost see the house finished before they'll pay for it, but people are paying deposits on the plans, on what's basically there on the plan. So you've got those sort of buildings as well. Then you've got smaller apartments, smaller units. We've got some DAs going through for smaller units, smaller blocks of apartments, and duplex or dual occupancies. I think the really critical thing here is the one way we'll solve the problem with housing is by having a diversity of housing. I think that's really crucial. It's not one house fits all. There is really a great need for a variety of housing.
One common argument that I hear is the attraction of moving regionally is the big block and the backyard. What's been the mood within the community in the face of these 3 high-rise apartment block buildings?
I think people are pretty excited about it. You've got people living in houses now that have got that traditional big block, and their Saturday mornings are taken up with mowing the lawn and checking out the garden and making sure their sprinkler system's working. And people that have moved into apartments or into some of those easier living lifestyle type apartments are saying their Saturday mornings now they can go out to coffee or go and see a movie, or they're not tying up their whole weekend with their garden work. So I think it's something that's different, and this is the crucial thing. There are different options for people depending on what they want. Sometimes people in Sydney who have lived in an apartment can't wait to get out and mow the lawn on a Saturday morning and have that great big apartment, that great big block to look after. Other people who might move into an area might not be able to afford that. So again, it comes down to what you want, what your lifestyle says you want. Having kids or not having kids. Kids are great when they've got that big backyard to play in, but maybe when the kids move out of home, maybe you don't need the big backyard anymore. Maybe that's smaller living. So again, it's about that whole diversity of stock.
Now, I know that Dubbo and Bathurst are different, okay? I mean, Bathurst's made up of a lot of heritage buildings, but in Dubbo you do have some unique ornate buildings there, and you do have a lot of heritage there. Does that ever come up?
Oh, certainly it does. And what we're talking about with all of the things with regional cities and with individual cities doing things in those cities, we're not talking about throwing away the heritage of the city. We're not talking about knocking down a whole bunch of beautiful old houses that were built over 100 years ago. It really is working with those developments. And so, as an example, I said before, people that have got those larger blocks, sometimes people, they used to call them granny flats. They're now called secondary dwellings. It's the same thing basically, but having a smaller house in the backyard when you've got that large backyard actually is really nice to keep a family together. And I know examples where people have built that smaller place, and it might not be the grandparents that are living there, it might be the kids that have just got their first child and they can't really afford to get out there and actually live in a house that they have to pay all the price of the land and the house for. Building in the backyard of mum and dad's place is not a bad option, and it gives mum and dad a little bit of rent as well as they go towards retirement. So you don't want to throw away that history, that heritage. You want to protect it, but also see how you can work with it.
Oh, it's been excellent to grab your insights this afternoon, and it'll be interesting to see how the parties address regional housing in their policies in the lead up to the March 25th election. Thank you very much for your time. See you.
Bye-bye.
That is the Mayor of Dubbo, Matthew Dickerson, and Chair of Regional Cities New South Wales, having a chat to us about the calls for replenishing housing stock and some of the different strategies they're employing over there in Dubbo.
Mayoral Memo with Matthew Dickerson from Dubbo Regional Council.